Genesis chapter 33. Now Jacob has experienced this huge spiritual experience that we read about last week, right? And so now we're going to see how he's going to react, right? As a changed man, as a person who has turned himself to God, right? Because of that experience, who has fully trusting in God in this context of seeing his brother, right? And if you recall, his brother wanted to murder him. His brother wanted to kill him. And his mother said, I will send word to you, and then you can come back once it's over. But his mother never sent it out.
Oh,
And so all that is in his mind right now, or that was on his mind previously, is, well, my brother still wants to kill me. But now that he's experienced this with the Lord, this prayerful state with God, he now sees things more fearlessly. And he knows that his brother Esau is not going to kill, right? And now he has that full trust in God, right? Even if, let's say, my brother is angry at me and he wants to kill me, God is going to get in the way of that. So he's fully trusting in God here, in the context of his brother, of meeting his brother Esau again. It says here, then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming and 400 men with him, just like he had said, right? So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. Now, when you read that part, you might think, okay, he's going back to his fearful ways, probably, right? He's going back to, let's divide them up. That way, maybe these will survive. That's not what he's thinking. The reason why he's dividing his family, we're going to read right now, is because he's going to organize them in such a way that he could present them to Esau one by one, right? And uh, we read here, however, it says he put the maids and their children in front. And we know, by the way, that he wasn't splitting them up so that maybe some could escape if he attacks, right? Like that's what he was thinking back in Genesis chapter 32. Here he's not thinking that. And we're going to see that because when Esau speaks, he speaks about them as if they're in close proximity. They're all in close proximity. We're going to read that right now. It says he put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Now, here is an issue. In the midst of this great conversion, we see some favoritism going on. Because who does he save for last? Rachel and Joseph. Now, you might think maybe it's an order of like birth, but no, because Leah is in the middle. She would have been in the front because she gave birth to
first.
children first. But no, we see that it's sort of like this favoritism going on. Like, yeah, I got the maid servants, but hey, I just really just married them for to produce children. Then we got Leah, but I mean, I had her just because, I got tricked, right?
Yeah.
And then Rachel, she's who I really wanted. If it was up to me, it would just be me and her, right?
Mhm.
So we got favoritism going on. Now, this is going to bleed into, this is going to flow into Genesis chapter 37, and it's going to lead to a lot of problems. We're going to get there, right? Soon. But he himself passed on ahead of them. So he knew, like, he has full faith in God. God is protecting me. He went all the way to the front and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. So he's bowing down 7 times, showing respect to his brother. So hold on. Jacob here is doing that. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him. So Esau wasn't even mad at him anymore. He ran over, he embraced him, he fell on his neck and kissed him, and then they wept. They both wept. Who would have expected that, right? Jacob did not. If he would have ran off, he wouldn't realize that Esau wanted to meet him to love him as a brother this whole time. He lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, who are these with you? The word that is used in Hebrew for these indicates close proximity. They're right here in front of me. So it wasn't like a fearful, let me split them up so that maybe some of them could survive. It wasn't like that, like it was in Genesis chapter 32 when he was very fearful, right? Now it's like, let me split them up so that they could come group by group so that I can introduce them and they will bow down to Esau. And it says that here. It says the children whom God has graciously given your servant. So again, he calls him servant right to his face. I am your servant. Then the maids came near with their children and they bowed. Leah likewise came near with her children and they bowed. And afterward, Joseph came near with Rachel and they bowed. So notice that they're all bowing before Esau. Well, I got this question for you all. I thought that it said Or no, no. I thought that, Protestants say that, bowing before, your priests, bishops, the Pope, or, simply bowing before an image, a sacred image, that's wrong because that's worship. Well, if that's the case, then why is Jacob and his whole family doing this? Not only this, but Abraham did this, if you recall back in Genesis chapter 23, right? Abraham did this before the Hittites twice in Genesis chapter 23, verse 7, and Genesis chapter 3, verse 12. When he bought the land that he was going to bury his wife Sarah in, he bowed before the Hittites two times. Later on, we're going to see Moses the prophet after he takes the people of Israel out of Egypt. He meets his father-in-law, Jethro, and he bows before him. Same idea. We see this throughout the Old Testament and even in the New Testament. We read in the book of Revelation, Jesus tells the church of Philadelphia, remain faithful as you are. If you remain faithful, I will make sure that I take those who are persecuting you and they will bow before your feet. They will worship at your feet. They will bow before your feet. Yes, the persecutors, right? They will bow before your feet and they will know that I have loved you, right? Jesus himself is saying that. Wait a minute, no, no, no. Jesus must be wrong because how can somebody bow to us? That's worship. In other words, that's worshiping like we're God, right? No, Jesus there is saying as a form of respect, they're going to bow before you. So bowing isn't just worship in the sense of worshiping God. It could also be um, a sign of respect, which is what we do before the sacred images. We're bowing as a sign of respect to the people that those images represent. And he said, what do you mean by all this company which I have met? And he said, to find favor in the sight of my Lord, right? In other words, he's asking him, when I was walking here, there was a whole bunch, there was people there, like Jacob's servants, who had a bunch of gifts as he was passing by. And Esau was like, what are all those gifts about? And he says, it's to find favor in the sight of my Lord. So in other words, he's saying to his face, right in front of him, he's telling him right in his eyes and right in his face, telling him, look, this is to show you that there's, there's nothing against you. I do not want, any problems with you at all. I I love you as a brother and I just want to, I want to get things straightened. Okay. I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to take anything from you. Matter of fact, I'm going to give to you. Here's a lot of gifts. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Jacob said, no, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand. For I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. So what is he saying here? It's like a double meaning almost. It's like a double meaning pretty much. So he's saying, please, please take it, right? He's very grateful of this situation before God. And he's saying, no, 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 please take it. Because seeing you is like seeing the face of God. What does he mean by that? What did we read about Genesis chapter 32 last week? When Jacob, it says he named that place Peniel, which means face of God. And he says, I have named this place Peniel because I have seen the face of God and lived. I survived. Now here he's saying the same thing. Now I have seen the face of my brother and I survived. Right? He's making that connection. He's recognizing that God is present. And when his brother hears this, it's like, he's interpreting this, he's hearing this and he's saying, okay, well, this means that, he's very grateful to his God of the situation that we're in. Meeting again, right? Verse 11, please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. Thus he urged him, and he took it. So Esau ended up taking it because of the urging, the persistent speaking of Jacob saying, "Take it, take it." Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey and go," meaning let us keep going, right? Because where are they at? They're not yet in the land of Canaan, even. So they're saying, "Let us get on." So he's saying, "Let us get on our way." But Jacob said to his brother Esau, my Lord knows that the children are frail and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. And if they are driven hard, one day all the flocks will die. And so what he's saying here is, my Lord knows, meaning his brother Esau, you know very well, right, that I come with young children that are frail, who are frail, and also these flocks and herds. I can't push them too hard, and I can't walk as fast as you and the 400 men that you came with, those strong men, right, that were adults. I cannot push my young children who are frail, and I can't push the flocks and herds too much because it's not good for them. So instead, you go ahead, you go forward. And so he's saying here, he's saying, I cannot push my young children too much. I cannot push the flock and the herds. Instead, you go. He says, and if they are driven hard, one day all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass on before his servant, and I will proceed at my leisure according to the pace of the cattle that are before me and according to the pace of the children until I come to my Lord at Seir. So there's a lot going on here. Notice how he's saying, "You go on before me, and then I'll meet you at Seir," which is where Esau was basically at that time, right? At the land of Seir, south of the land of Canaan. Okay, south of the land of Canaan. And so we see here how his brother Jacob is telling him, "My Lord, I am your servant." Why is he saying this? Wait a minute. Genesis chapter 25. And then Genesis chapter 28, when he received the blessing, what does it say? Your brothers will serve you. They'll bow before you. Isaac said that to Jacob. Why is it the other way around? Jacob is bowing down before Esau, as we saw earlier, with all his family even. And he's even calling him my Lord, my master. I am your servant, right? By the way, master servant or Lord servant, that relationship is simply saying that the servant is working in favor of the Lord. Okay. And so he's basically saying, I'm working in your favor. I am here to serve you. Why is he saying that? I thought Esau is technically supposed to bow before Jacob, right? Didn't Isaac say, may your brothers bow before you in the blessing? Because he's going to have the leadership, right? Scripture is so rich. One of the reasons why this is to show us what Jesus taught us, which is that the greater shall serve the least. So if you have a position of authority, you are to be a servant. And that is what Jacob is representing here. So you see what great spiritual growth Jacob is going through? Notice how he was last week as we were reading all those chapters and how he is now, how much he's grown, right? That little by little, right? Never lose faith. And then it says, Esau said, please let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. So again, he's saying, even Esau is saying, look, let me leave somebody with you, and then they'll be with you, right? To accompany you. They could serve for protection, right? Whatever you need. But Jacob said, what need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord, meaning no worries. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. He went back to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth. So let's take a look at a map. And before we look at that map, again, it's the idea of reconciliation, right? The two brothers reconciled, right? Here it is. Right. Esau was also blessed, as we could see. He didn't receive the same blessing as Jacob, but as we could still see, he was still blessed. Now, one thing that is interesting that a lot of people point out is that he was here in Peniel, and as a matter of fact, here's a map for all of you to see. And then he went west to Succoth rather than going south to Seir. Did he lie to his brother Esau? Because he said, I will eventually meet you where? At Seir. Then why didn't he head south? He went instead to Succoth. There are some individuals who will say that maybe they did meet in Seir. It's just skipped over. That's a possibility. Another possibility is, what is he doing? He's trying to take care of business because God told him go to the land of Canaan. So he's going to go, okay, I got to go to the land of Canaan. I'm going to go see my father. I'm going to got to take care of business here, and then I'll go meet my brother over in Seir. That's another possibility. Okay. So it's not necessarily that like he lied to his brother or anything like that. Okay. Especially considering the fact that, he had gone through that spiritual, experience and he's reconciled with his brother. Why on earth would he ruin it? Lying to his brother. But we're going to see that Jacob is going to settle in Shechem. And we're going to read about that now right here. We're at verse 17. It says, Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built for himself a house and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the place is called Succoth. There is Jacob right here. Now we're going to read about him settling in the land of Shechem. The land of Shechem is over here, crossing over the river Jordan to the land of Shechem. Now he is in the land of Canaan. So he's finally in the land of Canaan. Yes. By the way, Sukkoth, keep that name in mind. It basically means booths or tabernacles. Later on, we're going to get to in the book of Leviticus, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths. It's going to like be a commemoration of this. It's going to have a connection to this. Yeah. Because in Hebrew, Sukkoth means tabernacles or booths. Now, verse 18, it says, Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram and camped before the city. Okay, so he's there. He bought the piece of land where he had pitched his tent. So he pitched a tent there. Remember, he built a house in Sukkoth, but he left that house because he's saying, I got to go back to Canaan. I got to go where God told me to go. So he's thinking of just, I want to go where God told me to go. So I think that the most likely explanation of why it's not mentioned that he went to Seir is probably because he didn't actually go to Seir, but instead he was first trying to take care of business at the land of Canaan and then head over to Seir afterward to see his brother. Now, he bought the piece of land where he had pitched his tent. So he pitched a tent now. He doesn't have a house. He's living in a tent. From the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Okay. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel, which means God, the God of Israel, right? And so notice he built an altar there for God Almighty. He's there, he's honoring God, and he's in the land of the Shechemites, in the land of the city of Shechem. But wait a minute, why does it say Shechem's father? Is Shechem a person or is it a city? Both. Don't get confused. There was a man named Hamor, and he had a son named Shechem, and they lived in the city of Shechem. And we're going to see that they were actually rulers there. They lived in a palace. And so we're going to read about that in the next chapter now, okay? It says here now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, because remember, Jacob had a daughter with Leah, and her name was Dinah, all right, whom she had born to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. Now, some Bible translations might say the woman of the land, and it makes it sound like she's older. She's actually not older. She's a little girl. She's very young, maybe like 9, 10 years old. So she went out to see what? To see the daughters of the land. That's what it literally says in the Hebrew, to see the daughters of the land. Daughters of the land. The daughters of the land. All the young girls. And because she wanted to meet new people, right? Now, this is actually a very dangerous move because her going out alone by herself in this land filled with wickedness is going to lead to trouble. Verse 2, it says, when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the person that we just read about, Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite. Now, some Bible translations might say the Horite. Okay, so was Hamor a Hivite or was he a Horite? Because the Hebrew says Hivite basically, whereas the Greek says Horite. And what's the answer? That they are simply two names that refer to the same group of people. Because if you look at, ancient Hebrew text, it says Hivite. If you look at the Septuagint, it says Horite. Which one's correct? Well, both, I would say. It's likely just referring to the Hurrian people. Okay, same group of people. When Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, he was a prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force. So he assaulted her, this little girl. He was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, Get me this young girl for a wife. Now, right there in verse 4, where it says young girl, it uses the term yeled, which is referring to a little girl, an actual little girl that is not yet marriageable age. Okay. And so we could see that this was a wicked prince, right? Very wicked, what he did, right? So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, and it says, by the way, verse 3 says he loved the girl. In the Hebrew, it uses a term that simply means desire. It's not, obviously he didn't love her because there's no respect going on here. Right. She's also a young girl, not yet marriageable age. So this isn't right. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, get me this young girl for a wife. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. So he didn't do anything. Jacob did not do anything in the face of this disaster. And this is going to be a problem because he's not going to take a lead. What should he have done? Well, let's get straight to prayer mode and let's figure out how to do this with the help of God because God is our protector. And let us do the right thing, right? You know, these people are not strong enough. They're not strong enough to destroy Jacob and his sons because God made promises that are not yet fulfilled. And so you can't destroy them. They can't get destroyed. And so, but let's see what's going to happen. It says, then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now, notice that it says that Jacob heard. It doesn't say anything about Dinah telling him. You know that Dinah was actually basically kidnapped. She was in the palace and she wasn't let go yet. We're going to read about that later on. It says, now the sons of Jacob came in the field when they heard it, or they came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. So he done a disgraceful thing in Israel. Wait a minute. What, in Israel? What does that mean? Israel is a person. It's Jacob. He got his name changed to Israel 2 chapters ago. Why does it say in Israel? Because it's referring to the whole group. That's why his descendants are called Israelites. That's why the descendants of Esau, his nickname was Edom. His descendants are called Edomites, right? That's the toponym. He did a disgraceful thing in Israel, meaning at the very least, they knew that that was wrong. And that's why and even Moses, when he's the author, Moses is the author writing this hundreds and hundreds of years later, he says, such a thing ought not be done. So the Bible is clear that that sort of act is wicked in the sight of the Lord. It is wicked. But Hamor spoke with them. So this is the dad speaking, the dad of Shechem. He said, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it and acquire property in it. So notice, where is the harsh words for his son? Where is the punishment to his son who did that? Right? What is going on? Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, so to Jacob and his sons, if I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much a bridal payment and gift, and I will give according as you say to me, but give me the girl in marriage. So what does he mean there? Remember the gifts that were given when, for example, in Genesis chapter 24, when Isaac was going to marry Rebekah, gifts were given to who? To her family, right? And so that's basically what he's saying. He's like, what do you need? What would you like me to give you? Right? In return, I would like to marry your daughter. Right? But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit. So notice who's taking charge. It's not Jacob who is taking charge. He's not taking charge. He should have taken charge as the father of the house, as the patriarch of the house. Instead, who do we have taking charge? The brothers, who are very angry. And they're about to do something. Check this out. They answered with deceit, and because he had defiled Dinah, their sister, right? She had been assaulted by this man. They said to them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised. Remember, they're all circumcised in accordance with what God gave to Abraham in Genesis chapter 17 so that they could be part of the covenant. They're going to use that to their advantage. They're going to say, that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you, if you will become like us, in that every male of you be circumcised. Then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves. And we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go. You see what he just said? Take our daughter and go. Two things here. Number one, it shows us that Dinah was being held hostage. She was still in the palace. She was not let go yet. That's why he says, I will take our daughter and go. Number two, why do they say the brothers are speaking our daughter? She's not their daughter. She's their sister. That's because they're taking the place of Jacob, because Jacob is not stepping up and doing anything, right? Their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay to do the thing because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now, he was more respected than all the household of his father. This means that he had the most authority. He had a lot of authority, right? He was the prince of the land, right? So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city because that's where people are going to be walking in. In other words, they went to tell the people of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, these men are friendly with us. Therefore, let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? By the way, they're basically verse 23. It doesn't mean let's take it all from them. It basically means that it will be ours in trade, in the sense that they were going to be living in among us, they're going to be trading with us. That's the context based on what we read in verse 21 and 22. So as you can see, Hamor wants this problem resolved, but in the wrong way, in the sense that he's not holding his own son accountable. He's making excuses for him. He says, only let us consent to them and they will live with us. So all who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem. Now, do these people know that Dinah was assaulted by Hamor? Probably not. I mean, there's no mention that they were told or anything like that, but they we see that they're hearing is this great news that these people are going to become one with us, right? And so all of them who listened, they all got circumcised. That's what verse 24 tells us. Now, in verse 25, it says, now it came about on the third day. Remember, they were speaking deceitfully. They're not trying to become, they're not trying to do what they had said. It came about on the third day when they were in pain, right? Because of the circumcision, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, Dinah's brothers from the same mother and father, Jacob and Leah, each took his sword and came up upon the city unawares, right? They went without hesitation and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house. You see how she was being held hostage? They took her and went forth. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys and that which was in the city and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth and all their little ones and on their and their wives. So they were captured. The children and the women were spared, but all the men were killed. Even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. But they said, should he treat our sister as a harlot? A lot going on in those verses. Notice how, what does he say here? He says, notice how they reacted. They, first of all, they did this in deceit. They did this deceitfully. They got the people circumcised because they knew what was going to happen afterward. They were going to be incapacitated. They wouldn't be able to defend themselves. So then they take all of them out, kill all of them. Now they probably did it because they thought, oh, if we go out in a war, we're going to be outnumbered. Okay, so let's get rid of all those men, and then that way we'd be able to kill Hamor and kill Shechem, no problem, right? But they used the sacred right of entrance into the covenant with God. Genesis chapter 17 tells us that's what God gave to Abraham in the Old Testament times so that they could enter into covenant with God. They misused that in order to plan out their deceit, which, by the way, went too far because they killed a bunch of people that had nothing to do with nothing. So rather than being teachers of these individuals, hey, let me show you what the true God teaches, they instead circumcised them, fooling them, right? Rather than circumcising them so that they could enter into covenant, they circumcised them so that they could kill them. What is interesting is that it is stated here in Genesis 49, verses 5 to 7, right? It's not stated in this chapter, but later on we're going to read when we get to the end of Genesis. This is a little sneak peek. that Jacob is going to start to tell the future of his sons, and many of them are going to receive blessings. And look at what he says right here. Genesis 49, verses 5 to 7. Way later, Jacob is really old, and now he's telling his sons their future. He says, Simeon and Levi are brothers. These are the men specifically took their sword and just, like guerrilla warfare, just went through all the houses and murdered all of them. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel or their counsel, right? What was their counsel? Meaning them coming together to plan out their deceit, their conspiracy, right? I don't want any part of that. It was deceitful, wrong, and sacrilegious, right? Oh my glory, be not joined to their company. Imagine them hearing those words from their father Jacob. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Now imagine them hearing those words, knowing that their descendants are not going to receive an allotment in the land that God is going to give to them. Um, what else can we say about this? Well, as we could clearly see that they went too far with this whole ordeal, right? When they were, of course, planning on taking Dinah. Had they simply told them, no, you cannot do this, we're taking Dinah for ourselves. Now, again, they were probably concerned that, a war is going to break out because this man wants Dinah and he's powerful. But if that happens, God is going to be with them. That would be a great sign to all those who are watching. How did these group of, these people right here, this small group of people, they defeated all these people defending their sister? That would have been an honorable thing, defending themselves, right? But instead, they took matters into their own hands, and it led to this. And we see that, Jacob is concerned, and unfortunately, he said something that is objectively untrue. He says, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. We're all gone. No, you're not, because remember, God gave certain promises that still have to be fulfilled, that is going to take place through Jacob and his descendants. So how are they going to get destroyed? We see that here Jacob is falling back. He had a great conversion back in Genesis chapter 32, but now he's starting to fall back. He's not becoming the father that he's supposed to be, taking charge of his family. And he's starting to lose, it's almost like he's losing faith, right? You can kind of see it because he's saying these words that make no sense in light of the promises that God gave him. And it's to the point where he's distrusting in God's promises. And notice the response is should he treat our sister as a harlot? Yes, that's a good point. Obviously not. Obviously not. The answer is obviously no. But that doesn't justify what they did. Notice how they're justifying it. They're justifying it before their father, right? Now, what is going to happen here? We're going to see that there's going to be this transition in the next chapter where Jacob is finally going to take charge of his family. But there's still some things that are going to take place that you go, wow, what's going on? We're going to see that these brothers, they haven't changed much. Jacob is going to make a change in the next chapter, but not his children. And that's going to lead to mistreatment even of their own brother. We're going to read about that when we get to Genesis chapter 37. These brothers, they're um they need a change in their life because they're far from God. We see it, right? Now they went out and they plundered the city, and it's like, okay, well, now these women and children, how are they going to, what's going to happen now? What probably happened to them is they either got grafted into the people, they became one with the people, or they were simply, let go. Maybe, the woman married someone else, or, the Bible doesn't say what happened exactly. But what we do know is that, God is behind the scenes. Notice how not even one time in this whole section, this whole passage, God is not mentioned at all, not even one time. So you think maybe the promises of God are gone, because considering how short they've fallen. Well, now let's get to this next section, Genesis chapter 35, and we're going to see that it is a God-filled chapter. It's the complete opposite. It's like a revival. It's like another conversion. Let's read about this now. It says, Then God said to Jacob, Arise, go up to Bethel, and live there, and make an altar to God, who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. And so now God is telling him, go to Bethel. Remember where you had that dream and you built an altar there and you consecrated a rock, right? A pillar? Go back there. Why didn't Jacob hang out there? Why didn't Jacob go there? That is the place where he met God. Why didn't he see his father Isaac? Why didn't he go to his father Isaac to be with his father Isaac in his last days? I mean, now he's older, his father is older. Why not be with him? Why didn't Jacob do that? That problem would have been avoided. Um, we see that Shechem, before we move on, Shechem, this is where Jacob bought a piece of land from the sons of Amer for 100 pieces of silver, right? We read that in Genesis chapter 33, verse 19. And this is also the land that he gave to his son Joseph uh, in Genesis 48, verse 22, right? And it also mentions there that he, at some point, he fought off a bunch of Amorites to keep it, right, to defend his land. We're going to read about that later on. It's just like a little snippet. It's like, just a little brief mention of, oh yeah, I fought off a bunch of Amorites because they wanted to take the land from me. So yeah, interesting. But it shows how God was with him, right? And it's also where Joseph is going to end up being buried. Joseph, the son that was mentioned earlier, the son of Rachel, right?
Rachel.
Yeah. And this, as mentioned in Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. This is also where Jacob built an altar to the Lord. Okay. Back in Genesis chapter 28. This is where Dinah, okay, was dishonored. This is where Joshua renewed the commitment of Israel to God, the people of Israel, right, in the Old Testament. Joshua chapter 24, he renews the vows, right? He renews the covenant. And it's also where Jesus met the Samaritan woman. So there's a lot of stories connected to this land of Shechem. And Shechem is also known as Sychar in other parts, Sychar, or or Sychem, Sychem, right? It's the same place. It's the land of Shechem. And this is where Jesus spoke to the woman and the well, right? Do you guys remember these verses, right? Where it says, uh, John chapter 4, verse 5, it says, Jesus came to a town of Samaria called Sychar near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, and Jacob's well was there, right? And Jacob was hanging out there and he built a well there, right? And so that has a connection even with the New Testament when Jesus, he was there in the land he was there, right? Speaking to the Samaritan woman. That's when he spoke to the Samaritan woman. Catechism of the Catholic Church, paragraph 2356 tells us rape is the forcible violation of the sexual intimacy of another person. It does injury to justice and charity. Rape deeply wounds the respect, freedom, and physical and moral integrity to which every person has a right. It causes grave damage that can mark the victim for life. It is always, always an intrinsically evil act, so nothing could justify it. Graver still is the rape of children committed by parents, incest, or those responsible for the education of the children entrusted to them, right? And so it's a very evil sin. And so there's this one Bible commentary, Catholic Bible commentary, that says that, it's honorable the zeal that the sons of Jacob had for such a, terrible sin, but it was terrible the way that they went about it. But that is what anger does to us, right? It causes us to act in an irrational fashion. And he should have realized, my list of priorities, it should be my daughter, right?
Yes.
I need to go take care of that. But he kept silent. And that's why when his sons saw that it is, dad is not saying anything, our father is not saying anything, we take charge. When they see that, that's when children take charge. When they see that the parents don't do anything, that's when the children take charge. So one thing about that is how, we see, you know, people a lot of times they don't like to discipline their children because it is hurtful, right? It hurts to discipline your children. There is pain involved in that. But that requires strength, right? Just like, you're thinking, okay, the child is crying, but it hurts the parents as well. And it probably even hurts the parents more because they have full understanding, right? And they're, you know, how could I explain to my child, right, that this is wrong, right? But you have to remain persistent and you have to be able to deal with that pain. Because I know people that they don't like to get their children in trouble because they don't like to see them crying or they don't like to
Hurt him.
hurt them, right? But you have to be a strong parent
Mhm.
and you have to be willing to, yeah, out of love for them. Love is sacrificial. So it would be quite selfish of us to do that and to not discipline them and let them get worse and worse and worse until eventually they grow up and they're again, they're doing all kinds of even worse things. And the law isn't going to have any mercy on them. So so it requires sacrificial love, which involves even disciplining, even if it causes pain to ourselves, right? Seeking ways to communicate. A lot of times we have parents who, work very hard for their children, right? Father goes out 4 a.m. working until nighttime, right? And then we have, mothers who wake up super early and they, feed their children breakfast and they take them to school and all this stuff. And, the expectation there is, we expect the child, right? The child is going to honor their parents, even more so that, look at how hard they're working, look how much they're sacrificing. But young people don't see that a lot of the time. Some people say, well, why isn't my child or my young daughter, my young son, why aren't they giving me the respect that I deserve? And you most certainly deserve that respect because of how much you're sacrificing for your children. But your children are incapable of seeing that. So a lot of times it requires an actual communication. What is going on? I need to figure out what's going on with my son. What is going on with my daughter? They are acting ungratefully, but we could get to the bottom of this through communicating. Not just we're going to keep doing what we're doing and, hope for the best, right? There's a better way to go about it, right? Actually communicating. Going through a communication with sometimes it's, you know, we don't see things that our children go through. You know, there's some people that will say, my aunt made fun of me when I was a child. She would bully me, and my parents never did anything. And the parents are like, really, that was a problem for you? Like, we did not even realize that it was a problem for you. So sometimes something as simple as, you know, asking for forgiveness, that's humbling. And it is, good for reconciliation. There could be oh, that's even worse, right? That's true. If there is conflict between husband and wife, they're just going to go to which whenever is easier and keep praying for them, keep fasting for them. A lot of parents don't talk to their children of, you know, the possibility of going to hell, which is a real possibility. And people, a lot of times I know people who are like that, who disrespect their parents or they don't listen to their parents and they're doing terrible things, even living in their household. And they think that they're untouchable. They think that, I could do pretty much whatever I want. And, they don't even fathom the possibility of going to hell because they just think that, oh, well, God's going to let me in just because he has to. Yeah, it's very dangerous. The Catechism, paragraph 2314 tells us every act of war directed to the indiscriminate destruction of whole cities or vast areas, meaning just kill everybody, don't even look at who you're killing, with their inhabitants is a crime against God and man, which merits firm and unequivocal condemnation. A danger of modern warfare is that it provides the opportunity to those who possess modern scientific weapons, especially atomic, biological, or chemical weapons to commit such crimes, right? So that's something to think about. And you know, even in relation to what we read in Genesis chapter 34. So it's very interesting. I think we could stop right there. We'll read about how Jacob, Jacob's revival, right? Because you might think maybe the promises of God are over. No, we're going to see that God is going to reaffirm the covenant blessings, and God is going to be so patient, and little by little, right? The changes that God is going to make, even with the most unexpected twist. Like there's no way this could be fixed. We'll also read about Esau's descendants in Genesis chapter 36 and what happened with Esau because we're not actually done with Esau, the person Esau, the brother of Jacob. The person Esau, the brother of Jacob, we're going to see is actually they're going to unite. We're going to see that Jacob he's not going to have to leave Canaan. Instead, God is going to give him the blessing to stay in the land of Canaan, and Esau is going to come to live with him for a time before he moves back. And we're going to see how Esau is even connected to the promises that were given to Sarah and Abraham. How? We'll read about that when we get to Genesis 36. And then finally, Genesis 37, we'll read about Joseph, who's like the central figure from Genesis 37 all the way to the end of the book. He's a huge figure, and we're going to see how he actually prefigures two people, at least two people in the New Testament. He prefigures Christ and he prefigures Saint Joseph. There's so many connections with him and Jesus our Lord and with him and Saint Joseph.